All right, welcome to the Valle Podcast, episode number 7. Today, I'm extremely excited to have a friend and two-time World Series champion, Jonny Gomes. Johnny, thanks for being with me, man.
Nice setup you have here,
I
man.
appreciate
not
it.
too many names on the wall, so I'm one of the first.
You're going to be adding.
This thing's going to be riddled in no time. This is a
Thank you.
good setup, buddy.
I kind of want to start, if you don't mind. I've heard you talk about the story a little bit, but
Yeah.
your early childhood.
Yeah.
Would you mind kind of sharing kind of a little bit what that was about?
Early childhood, yeah. A lot of meat on the bone.
Yeah.
It was. Everyone's got a story, man. Everyone's got a story to, what built that grit, what built that grind. Fortunate to make it to the big leagues and play a long time. I have like the platform made to talk about it. But I know a lot of people that, went through what I went through that, didn't play in the big leagues and all this stuff. But having kids now, I mean, how do you build grit? How do you build the grind? It's tough. I don't know. But yeah, man, it wasn't the white picket fence. It wasn't, the dog running around and, dropped off at school. Looking back on it, geez, man, times were like tough, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it for the world. Bouncing around houses, at times, not having a house to call home. But man, I mean, I have some of the best friends to this day, when I used to crash on their couch or crash in their house or, when their parents were going grocery shopping, they're going to go for one extra kid because Johnny's always at the house. But there's never any questions asked. But when you talk about it, like sounds miserable. You're like, oh, geez, that must have been so tough. We used to go to like campsites on Mondays, like KOA campsites or whatever. And we'd riddle, the dumpsters looking for cans to put them in a bag to go recycle the cans for gas money. But that was just the hand we were dealt, man. I mean, my brother and I, we dove in and we were sprinting from garbage can to garbage can. And we just didn't know any different. And, it's not like, oh, I feel sorry for this kids or anything. But man, it was just the hand that we were dealt. We had a lot of grit. We had a lot of grind from that. But, yeah, not the white picket fence type of childhood.
Like, that perspective, because it seems like you have, obviously you have an amazing perspective on it, and I don't think everyone would have the perspective.
Yeah.
Did you get that perspective from your mom?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Is that how she handled those situations? I mean, because it's incredible.
Yeah, and it was not, poor us by any means.
Ever.
It was not like, oh, like whatever. It was just like, this is the hand we're dealt. Like, this is what we got to do. Like, you want new football equipment. You not want new baseball equipment. You want to go here. Like, we got to find some ways to like make some money. I mean, when I was in, I think like 4th grade, we had a paper route, my mom and I together, that started at 4:00 in the morning, and pop up, fold those papers up and start rifling them off and then get dropped off at school and find a way home afterwards. But my mom was never like, oh, this is so tough, poor us, I wish we had something different. It was just like, this is the hand we're dealt, and we just got to, grind to shine.
What ages was kind of that stage?
Probably like, 2nd grade until, so it's kind of like in and out, some different times, but I remember some tough times. It was only like 4 or 5 months at a time where things were like really tough, and then we kind of come out of it. But 2nd grade to about freshman in high school,
Was kind of
yeah. I mean, that's a big stretch.
Yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't like straight through. We'd chill and we'd have a house. We'd be going and we'd find our way home after school or after practice at like 5 or 6 o'clock, and like the house is getting packed up. We're like, yep, didn't make rent this month. On to the next. It's kind of like, all right,
wow,
let's get it on. So, I mean, fast forward to, just having like my own house now and just like totally valuing like the roof above my head has nothing to do with the size of it. It's not a big, house by any means. You think like That's the other thing about the big leagues. Everyone thinks you play in the big leagues like you have a helicopter and a jet and you're just nailing it with a lazy river in your backyard. Like, not it. You know, played 12 years, 11 one-year deals. So that was tough. But I mean, there are so many things that happened in my childhood that like I just value more than I think the people in my circle value it.
Right. Yeah. What kind of caused the ups and downs? Like, do you mind me asking?
No.
What caused those ups and downs? Because it sounded like sometimes it was going good, and then it kind of.
I think it goes back to now where we are as adults and like parents is like just job security, right? I mean, if you don't have a job, you're not getting paid, right? You know, my mom, I think she dropped out of high school, as a lot of people did back then. You know, it's the whole hippie era. But yeah, she was just a hustler. I mean, she did everything from working at a gas station to being a car, you know, a dealer like at a casino.
Really?
We had a paper route together, just all kinds of like hustle money. But when times were tough, you know, it's tough to pay the bills, and we were just kind of like on to the next. So job security is a pretty big deal.
Did it? Would you say it kind of forced you to mature quicker? Obviously?
Yeah, we had to. I mean, just finding a roof, you know, at times, not like all the time, but it was just like, you know, having kids now, you don't have sleepovers during the week, right? It's kind of like, what's going on over here? Why is he spending the night? But my core group of friends and their parents were just, they're so cool, so awesome. And it was never like a feel sorry. And my brother and I, like, we never told the story. I remember an article came out, I think my rookie year in USA Today, about how tough our childhood was. And the whole team like looked at me and they're like, what is this? I go, I never aired my laundry out to anybody because I didn't need anyone to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a baseball player. I didn't need to bring any of this up. But from like, you know, it's so weird to say, but like homeless, you know, it's like, yeah, we were homeless because we didn't have a home, but it wasn't all the time. It was, you know, 3 or 4 months at a time. But we'd have like little rentals here and there.
Yeah.
So from probably like second grade to like sophomore year, probably lived in like 25 houses, bouncing around, just making ends meet.
Man, your mom must be incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like that's like,
yeah,
it's amazing. You ever talk with her, like kind of just like the appreciation of the grind that she must have been going through, and also keep that perspective that you were talking about. I mean, what an incredible woman. What an incredible woman.
And I mean, I got to check myself today because I'll just get bummed out that I got to run my kids to practice. You know, I'm like, this isn't even a fourth of what this woman was doing for my brother and I. We were going all over the place. And I mean, we're scrapping for gas money to get to practice, right? And stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh, geez, you got practice at 4. I got to pick you up at 3. And we got to have a little snack on the way. And we got to do this. And I got to pack your bag. And I'm like, relax, dude. Like Mama Gomes would just nail this. Like this was her life. So, yeah, man, there's so much stuff that she did that, you know, built me to be the parent that I am today, which,
that's amazing.
You know, so grateful.
Was there an element of you wanting to make it to the big leagues to kind of help her with her financial security? Was that even at a young age, or did you ever think about that, or it never really crossed your mind because it wasn't really, that wasn't what your focus was on anyway?
Yeah, and I thought too, like if I was ever to like buy my mom like a Cadillac or put her up in this huge house, she'd probably give it back, you know.
Right.
I mean, she would want to come to the game, right? And she did not want the fruits and the flowers that came with it by any means. She just wanted like a prime rib and like $500 to gamble with. Like that was her, you know, her bonus. She followed me around. All she ever wanted was like my jersey, and on the back of the jersey it said Mama Gomes.
That's really cool.
And she loved traveling around and coming, but I eventually got her set up and dialed in. But yeah, she never wanted, you know, anything back by any means. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Was there like a coach that kind of took you under your wing, you know, under his wing when you were at that age, maybe going through? Obviously, you said some of your friends' parents made a good impact and was really kind of helping you out. Was there a coach specifically that was kind of that way too?
There was a few. I mean, so from bouncing around, like there was a lot of coaches. It was And I love hearing those stories of like the coach and the impact of the coach.
Yeah.
Mine were like the players, right? I had some great like friendships with my players that I was sharing the dugout with. And it was just like how it worked out. Like I didn't like have a big family. My buddy, like growing up, just do like Ricky is this Italian family. And I remember I went to a family reunion with them and there was like 200 or 300 people there. I'm like, you know all these people? You kind of have to know them. They're your family. And I was like, what? I had no idea. Like, I mean, I got like, no aunts, uncles. I got one uncle who's got 2 kids. They're in Minnesota. They're far away, but grandma, grandpa, like they've all, passed. So real, like, didn't really have that family aspect of things growing up. So the dugout and the teams, was my family. But, my high school coach, one of them passed away. The other's still alive back home. This guy, Paul Mayo, who was great, followed my whole career. My junior college coach was just like, just absolute like hit guru in junior college. And he's still there, Coach Nylinger. So it's just, Casa Grande High to Santa Rosa Junior College and into the big leagues. But the two coaches there, to this day, are close to my heart.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, how important do you think it is for coaches to try to get, I guess, more outside of the game, kind of investing in players?
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time, but I think baseball coaches now have more knowledge than maybe ever before. With all the data and everything that we've learned over the years, it's way more advanced than it was 30 years ago, even 10 years ago now. But that element of investing in the individual as well. Like how important do you think that is?
I think it's great. Someone asked me, when I was in player development with the D-backs after a while, like, what's your favorite thing, or what's your most like challenging thing, and about coaching. And my favorite thing is, it's weird, but it's like finding what language that player speaks, right? And I'm not talking Spanish, English, right? Like what makes that guy tick. And if you like invest in that has nothing to do with the swing. That has nothing to do with mechanics. And I think that's the funnest thing about coaching is it takes a while, right? It takes like weeks, months for some of what makes this guy tick and what's going to get this guy to the next level and then get to coaching. And I think it's tough this day and age with these kids bouncing around on so many teams, the transfer portal, all this stuff. It doesn't really give the coach that many opportunities to get to know the kid, right? Because it's like, we got to win tonight because some of these guys are probably out of here next year. We used to have in high school, Bob Leslie, he just used to rake the mound. And the whole team would be around the mound. And at times you're like, enough raking this mound. But the stories he would tell, the storytelling, I think, is kind of lost in our game. And, just having the ability to talk ball and not just grinding away with, PVC pipes and balls and bands and weighted bats and not like telling the story of the game, figuring out what makes these kids tick, I think is kind of where the game is light right now, but it can come back.
Yeah,
right? Everyone,
sure.
This old school, new school, like it'll come back. History repeats itself.
Absolutely. Well, we were just talking offline about George Brett, right? And that was one of the things you said. One of the best human beings, and the stories, and just the kind of passing that along. And I think that's what That's what I love about baseball too. Is I feel like, and maybe it is the same way in other sports. I didn't grow up in other sports, so. But I do think baseball has that nostalgia kind of feel to it, that family vibe. That like if you're in the club, these are the things that are getting passed around, these stories and things.
And once you get to pro ball and then the big leagues, or even in high school and college a little bit, is the game of baseball now it's like the Olympics. It's a global game, and it's a real global game. You got guys from Canada, South America, of course, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican. These guys from all over, Japan, Korea, Venezuela. It's just this melting pot of the whole. And that's why the big leagues, I think, is so good right now of talent, because baseball is getting played everywhere. The most popular sport in the world, probably cricket, because what they got in India. But Baseball is just it's a global game. It's like the Olympics. It really is. Like
Yeah.
every single day in the big leagues. Major League Baseball is not the best Americans by any means. You know, it's this melting pot of people from all over. So there's so many stories and culture changes, and like the big league clubhouse it's rocking and rolling right now.
I bet.
Yeah.
Now, so in high school, so you kind of talk about you went to high school, you had some of these coaches that were
Yep.
a big impact to you. You know, you've been through a lot of stuff. Like as I was doing research on you, I'm like, man, like I hear, I'm reading these stories that, like one after another, and you know, whether it be your high school coach passing away when you know in high school, you losing a best friend in a car accident, having a heart attack. You know, while you're playing pro ball after you, like, were you MVP or all-star? I mean, you know, but it always seems like you come out on the other end of this, of every single instance, all these tragedies that probably would break a lot of people. Yeah. And it's amazing. Like, what gives you that ability? Is there something that has given you that ability to come on the other side of all these different instances?
Yeah, I honestly can't like put my finger on like why. And at times, you know, it's like you kind of get like upset or a little bit angry of like why all this has happened to me. Someone asked me like, what, you know, characteristics do you bring, or what's like your strongest? And I'm like, oh geez, you know, sometimes it's tough for me to get like all deep on this, but like, you know, like the coping aspect, right? And that's really like unique. Is like, what do you have to cope with? Right? Like, what's on your plate that you just have to deal with? And sometimes you can be like really successful, like your parents are really successful, right? And you have to like cope with that, right? You're different. So I think the coping aspect or the coping characteristic is pretty unique and not like talked about a lot. Like coping with like being short, right? Like you talk to Dustin Pedroia, like this dude had to cope with it from Jump Street, and he gave zero craps about it, right? He didn't. I mean, that's just the hand he was dealt. Talk about like this guy just had to hit like the high fastball. Why? Because they're all high when you're short, right? If you think about it. But the coping aspect, and you know, I mean, can you like cope with, you know, not having an elite fastball, right? Can you cope with like not being fast and figuring out like different ways to, you know, adjust and to succeed and go to the next level? But I mean, coping with not having a lot of money and being homeless at the time, coping with, you know, losing your varsity coach, you know, coping with being in a fatality car accident and losing, you know, your best friend, coping with like having a heart attack. And it's just like, geez, you know, I mean, you tell these stories and some other people want to cry when I didn't even like cry. It was just, it was a tough ride. But like I mentioned, man, it was the hand I was dealt. And now I think in the position I'm in now and the platform I am now to like give back some of these like coping characteristics that I had at times for the next generation.
You know, when I think back, and I just kind of just hit me, but as you're going through these things, it's almost like, you know, again, I mean, I don't know if you believe in God or anything like that, but like God put you through these experiences. And I think of the experience when you were with the Red Sox in 2013, you know, what happened in Boston. Yeah. And you had already been prepared. You've been preparing your entire life to help be a leader. And that's what you ended up being in that moment when a city and like, you know, it could be building you up for this one moment to help a team cope with something that was, you know, no one could fathom.
So yeah, man. So that was real interesting. I mean, after the Boston Marathon bombing, you know, the 4 people passed away. I mean, it was a bloodbath like downtown. And when you go through like someone passing away or someone, you know, in your life, out of your life, or a big, you know, catastrophic, you know, event like that, you learn real quick that people like grieve differently. Right? Like you don't have to have your head in the sand to show that you care, right? Like you don't have to go to bed like crying every night, because there's a couple people that had their shoulders back and their heads up still, even though that happened. And there has to be a leader. There has to be like an alpha in the room. And I wasn't like, you know, like, hey, I'm not going to have my head in, like I've dealt with this. I've dealt with, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, are of age, 30, 34, that haven't had someone close in their life pass away. which is fine. Haven't had financial problems, which is fine. Haven't had health problems. And I was like, I got this. Like jump on my back. We're going to rally around the city. We don't want the city to rally around us. So that's where that 617 jersey came, to rally around them. We got to honor these people every single night to where it's exhausting. And then during that, if people forget that the Bruins went to the Stanley Cup and they went to like Game 7, and everybody was like, wow, this is just an absolute Cinderella story of the Boston Marathon, and then they're going to win the Stanley Cup, and they lost. And then you find out real quick that sports does not care what you got going on. They do not care about what motivates you. It's whoever scores more points than the other team's going to win. So, there's the David Ortiz speech right when we got back, and everyone was like, was that like the rallying point? And I go back to like that rallying point was when the Bruins lost in the Stanley Cup. Really? And I mean, everybody was like, oh, we're almost there. We're almost there. The Band-Aid is almost on, and they lose. And it's like, that was not supposed to happen. And then I remember we came to the clubhouse the next day, kind of unsaid, but like, holy cow, we got a lot on our backs now. I mean, everyone was so close to like being healed, right? And the Band-Aid just got ripped right off. I think that was a big driving force for the Red Sox 2013, was watching the Bruins lose and then just having everyone jump on our back. Outside of the fact of we were good. We were really good. We didn't need that, but it sure helped.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say life experience builds resilience or just reveals it?
Yeah, I think it reveals it. Like the whole genetic side of things, I think like success and money and failure just make you more of the person you are, right? I don't think it changes you much. I think there's not many opportunities where resilience and success and money are able to get some of these characteristics out, right? I mean, there's a lot of really good like philanthropists and a really good like, charity workers that don't have the opportunity to give back because they don't have the platform. But I think the more success you have and the more money you make and the bigger your platform just makes you more of the person you are. I think it's already in you. When people talk about like the success and the money like changed him, I don't think it ever changed him, right? It just made him expose more of the person he is.
Right.
And there's some people I know, it's like, geez, this guy, I really hope he doesn't get famous because the people are going to find out real quick that this dude's not it.
Right. Well, a lot of times when you get the money too, you have what they say, you have access to excess.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And depending on how you want to use that,
right.
You'll find out quickly.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
All right, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor of the Valle podcast, Bill Gray's. Bill Gray's is the home of the world's greatest cheeseburger. So whether you're craving a juicy burger, milkshake, or their famous grape plate, which we do tons of reviews of, Bill Gray's has got you covered. Swing by the local Bill Gray's and order online at billgrays.com. A big thanks to Bill Gray's for sponsoring the show. Great food, great moments every time. So then you go to college. Where do you go?
So I go to Santa Rosa Junior College.
Okay.
Which is a great program. Like I talked about, my coaches there, Damon Nylinger, still at the head. And my first year of junior college, I finished the season with a whopping 210 batting average and 1 home run in junior college. Okay. And I knew at that time that like baseball's hard. Baseball is really hard, and I had to overhaul everything that I was doing, starting with I got to turn over every single leaf possible, right? So I got to get faster. I got to get stronger. I got to figure out this swing. I got to find a position, right? Like I was a catcher my whole life coming up. Oh, really? I go there, and there's Tony Onrich, who's in Seattle now as a coach. He was an early commit to Texas Tech, so I had to move the outfield or sit. So then going into my sophomore year, it's like, do I go back behind the plate or do I go in the outfield? So there was a lot there, but at the end of the day, what I knew real quick is baseball is a results-driven industry. It has zero cares of how tall you are, how short you are, if you're left or right-handed, how much you weigh, and all this stuff. So I remember I took one day off after our last game, and I was like, I just got to go like all in on this. And I was like, if I could dedicate, 1 year, 1 year of like all in, right? So I went all in, and I did pretty good. It's still junior college. People in junior college still have these like cartoon numbers I talk about, hitting 480, hitting 510, as many RBIs as game played. I didn't have the cartoon numbers, but it was a big input. So I think I went to like just under 330, 320 something, 11 home runs. So in 1 year, 10 more homers and, 120 more points on your batting average. And then no college scholarships anywhere after. And that was a wrap. And I was cool, man. And my sophomore year, my first year in my locker, I was like, at the end of this year, I am going to be totally content with hanging this jersey up and going to chapter 2 of my life, whether it's putting on another uni or whether it's going somewhere else. And I hung that uniform up, and I was like, obviously we didn't have the money to pay for college, and I knew that, and I grinded for a college scholarship, and phone didn't ring, right? And I was like, well, I kicked over every leaf possible, so let's go to chapter 2. Wasn't really cut out for like the cubicle job. I would never coach it, but like I wasn't that academic because all my time and effort was in the cage or on the field. I wasn't the dude, like never left practice early for homework. I wouldn't tell a kid that, right? You got to get the grades, you got to do this stuff. I wouldn't follow this path, but so I didn't have the grades, here and there, but I had the grades to play. So I enrolled into the Marines. That was chapter 2. And everyone's like, oh, why would you do that? Because I wanted to, right? I absolutely wanted to. And then if you're a Boy Scout and you make it to the top of Boy Scouts, you become what's called an Eagle Scout. And when you get to be an Eagle Scout, you get to skip like the first 6 weeks of just the crazy boot camp, right? So I was never an Eagle Scout, but I was crazy in shape. I knew that was on my plate for a long time. So I was running, like a sub 5 mile. I was in like the 450s for a mile. I could do pull-ups galore. I could do push-ups galore. So my body was always there. And that was actually what stood out for me to get a call from the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time of wanting me to go to a workout. And then in the beginning, I thought it was a prank. I was like, my buddies are like, you're going to go to a professional workout, but you don't even have a scholarship to a D2, D3 school, like right down the road. And I was like, oh, you got me. Like, so sure enough, Scouts Hank King wanted me to go to this Northern California tryout for the Devil Rays. And I was like, what is this going to be like? So I go, and long story short, it was the best day of baseball I've ever had in my life. Yeah. I mean, I remember taking batting practice, just launching balls over the scoreboard, going like, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I don't know what's happening. This is new to me. Yeah.
This is as a surprise.
The scouts are like, 70, 80 power. I didn't say anything, but don't write that down. I've never done this in my whole life. Fastest 60 I ever ran. I remember launching balls from the outfield, like over third base, over home plate. I'm just like, whoa, what is happening? So they asked me to stay afterwards. And they're like, have you taken any like recruiting trips yet? I was like, nah, I haven't. So my negotiating was terrible, right? Because I didn't know to cover up or whatever. I was like, no, I haven't taken any. Actually, I haven't gotten invited to any. And they're like, so where are you going to play ball next year? I was like, nowhere. Like, I'm done. These guys are getting ready to draft me, and I can't even play at the next level. And I'm actually like 3 weeks out. I'm negotiating. I probably could have left, but I wasn't negotiating with the Marines. And the reason I wanted to get out of that first 6 weeks of boot camp is there's a lot of like heavy backpack carrying. And back from the fatality car accident that I was in my sophomore year, my back was screwed up. Like, I didn't even carry a backpack just because like my lower back would just get so banged up. And I couldn't like back squat, so I was dealing with a lot of like back problems, and I was like, how can I get out of that? And they're like, it's impossible to get out of that. And I'm like, these freak Eagle Scouts, they can get out of it. Right. So we're kind of working with that. I go, I'm actually, I'm talking to the Marines. And they're like, can you please do us a favor and not go to the Marines until after our draft? And I was like, I'm a pretty loyal guy. Like, I mean, I'm in the weeds, with going. And they're like, don't go. I'm like, all right. So I drive home with my mom, and she's like, well, how'd it go? I go, well, it went great, but if they think they're getting that guy, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I could ever have that day again, and they're going to think like that's the player I am. So fast forward, boom, I end up getting drafted in the 18th round, and they call me, and they're like, all right, we're in the 18th round. So I was like, so I get a signing bonus, right? They're like, yeah, it's kind of how it works,
Great negotiator again.
Yeah, right. They're like, well, we do like $1,000 a round, right? So we want to offer you $1,000. And I go, that's not going to cut it. I need 20. And they're like, we said it's 1,000 a round, 18,000. Like, all right, yeah, we'll take it. That's the most money I've ever seen, heard of, or anything. So signed in the 18th round for 18,000. Went to Princeton, West Virginia, and it clicked. It just clicked. I mean,
clicked? Like what was it? Do you know? Looking back at it, what was it that clicked?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to give you like some mechanical stuff, but I'd say from Jump Street, like I didn't fear velocity, right? I could hit a fastball. I knew I could hit a fastball. I got my body like in crazy fitness shape because I thought I was going to go to boot camp. So I was super strong. So I was able to like miss hit balls for doubles and for home runs. And then just kind of looking around me, I just knew like my athletic ability was better than a lot of people that were sharing the clubhouse with.
Yeah.
With my military, where I was going, I could pay attention to details. I was able to pick up on like patterns from pitchers. I mean, some of what I thought was amateur was like really advanced. I'd always like study the pitcher because of my catching background. And I remember like one of the first tips that like I found was these pitchers would go to the rosin bag and would throw the same pitch after a rosin bag. And I was like, oh, that's like a hack, right? So he's like pitching, and then, maybe he'd get an out and he'd kind of do a circle and he'd go to the rosin bag. And every pitcher was different, but he'd like always throw a curveball after the rosin bag. And I got this tip, and it was like the first like chess match move that I ever like figured out. And I was like, that's so cool, right? And I remember I would just crush certain pitchers after they went to the rosin bag. And you go in the dugout, like, were you sitting on changeup? I was like, yeah. They're like, how? I'm like, every time he goes to the rosin bag, he throws a changeup. And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, watch the game. Watch the game. A pitcher, like 2 walks, 3 walks, or whatever, the pitching coach would go out. I go, after every time the pitching coach goes out, he throws a fastball right down the middle to get like back in the count. So after every pitching change, I would sit like fastball down the middle. Amateur stuff. So I got like the rosin bag, and after a mound visit, you're going to see a strike. I was like, this is great, like getting these tips. And then almost to the Marines, to MVP of the Appalachian League. And
did like picking up the details, you say like was from you were training for the Marines, that's kind of like where it kind of got you to think that, or were you always that way, or did you just start doing that in pro ball?
So I was cool with failure, right? But I never want to get exposed for not being prepared, right? When I say never, I never wanted to. Did I at times? Like, sure, right? But I never wanted like a dude to throw a curveball or changeup or split in the game and me not knowing he had it.
Right.
There's little stuff. I remember playing center field. I was a center fielder at home, and the visiting bullpen was on the left field line. And whenever somebody was warming up, I was just studying that pitcher, like staring like every single pitch like he could throw. And you see these guys, and they're in a little controlled environment in the bullpen, but they would always throw one pitch more than the other. They'd always throw one pitch more than the other. And when that guy came in, I'd sit on that pitch that I was watching him warm up with like all the time. And then they would go into the stretch, and I'd already have his times figured out, whether he was a slide step guy or a big leg kick. And the guy'd come in the game, and I'd get on first base one way or another, and I'd take off first pitch. And they're like, how'd you know he was like a high leg kick guy or whatever? I was like, you guys didn't watch him warm up? Little things like that was like so advanced, right? And I didn't think it was advanced. I just thought like picking up and kicking over every leaf possible to succeed during the game. And you kind of figure out that some people are just kind of lost out here and not wanting to pay attention to as many details. So I wasn't the most talented guy, I didn't think. Even I got MVP of the freaking league, but man, it was like mentally exhausting for me to pick up like all these things.
Did when you got to the bigs, is everyone like that, or still not everyone's like that?
No, I don't think. When you go to the big leagues, I'll tell you, like, they say, it's tough when you like meet your hero and he's not the guy that you thought he was. There's a lot of just God-given ability up there. There is. For the hardest thing, I think, in the world of all sports to do is to hit a fastball. And then you see some of these guys that are all-stars and really good at their craft that don't work at it. They're just God-given ability. And there's guys like that, like, where math just came easy.
Right.
Reading
in every
came
aspect
easy.
Of life,
yeah, every aspect.
Like that,
the photographic memory, the guy that, read something about, history, and all of a sudden he's a history buff, right? That can happen in sports, right? And you can't get mad at it by any means, but there's a lot of, not everybody. I mean, there's dudes that hit, run, throw, grind, video, biomechanics these days, and this and that you have to take your game to the next level. But then there's a lot of guys that are just God-given ability that you could wake them up like December 15th out of bed and be like, hey, we got a game today. And they're like, oh, cool, whatever, 3 for 4. There's that guy out there.
What is, would you say one of the guys, maybe I should ask you, who would you say one of the guys you play with was the most kind of like what you were talking about describing, is like really being detail-oriented, like just a grinder, I guess, in every sense of the way? Who would you say would be at the top of the list?
So the 2 guys that I played with, and that was the thing with my, path, is I played for a lot of teams, right, so there's a lot of guys.
A lot of guys.
So guys that stick out to me probably were some of the most decorated, right? So what jumps off to me is a Josh Donaldson, a Joey Votto, and a Dustin Pedroia that really had to grind. And I don't think they had to, because I think they had the God-given ability, but they also had like this another level. And I'd be working out with them, going with them, and I'm like, they're so far up here, which is like ridiculous. But Josh Donaldson, Joey Votto, and Pedroia, and like Donaldson and Votto, like these guys are like minor league grinders. Both of them converted catchers.
Oh,
right?
Really?
Yeah, Joey Votto's a catcher in the minor leagues. He's going to be first ballot. Yeah. Donaldson, I don't know about the ballot, but he's got an MVP. He did some. He was one of the guys that in baseball like could take over a game, which is really hard when you hit once out of 9. Yeah. You can't go like basketball and just run down and shoot every time. So that's wild to watch. But those guys pay attention to detail. Joey Valle he's just next level.
I've heard that. That was going to be my guess. Before I wanted to see if that was one of the guys, because I've heard that.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen this, we all joke around, like call our shots. Like I've seen this guy probably call like 8 shots and really do it.
Really?
Like, yeah, I'm going to go deep on a 2-2 curveball to left field this at bat. Like, what? Like cheat code type of stuff. But he was so far ahead. And so, and it wasn't like every game by any means. Like I said, I played in 3 years, probably like 8 out of the whole time, whether a spring training or a game. This guy was so dialed in, it was ridiculous. Yeah.
Now, you also play with some unbelievable talent with the Rays minor league system.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, that crew.
Yeah.
Who are some of the guys you play with down there that people would know?
That's Josh Hamilton.
Yeah.
That man, Josh Hamilton and manager of Twins right now, Rocco Baldelli, and then a Carl Crawford. Like, those 3 dudes, I remember in the minor leagues being like, my first instructs was those 3 guys. It was Josh Hamilton, Rocco Baldelli, and Carl Crawford. I remember just being like, this is the minor leagues? Like, there's like 4 levels above this, and then the big leagues? And I remember just being like so overwhelmed to a scout, and they're like, this is a pretty unique scenario. It's not like this.
It's not across
and
the
I was
board.
like, thank gosh. Because if I'm not like, but those 3 dudes were absolutely some of the most athletic, gifted, working hard dudes that I've ever played with.
Really?
A young Josh Hamilton, his skill set was absolutely ridiculous. He used to take batting practice. He'd call it like around the world. And so he's left-handed. So like left field line, homer, left field, homer, left center, center, right, and then down the line, homer. All these are homers. And then you come out, it's kind of be like, like, what was that? That was ridiculous. And I mean, that guy, he's 20 years old doing that, you know. And then, you know, Rocco Baldelli, I mean, this guy, he used to like elevate on his swings because he had just the craziest like fast twitch, you know, muscle fibers I've ever seen in my life. Carl Crawford, you know, 3-sport, 5-star guy. He was ridiculous.
So you knew even at that level, you were like, these guys are all stars in the big leagues someday. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I mean, so when you saw Josh Hamilton have an MVP season, I mean, even after everything, you're like, yeah, okay, I knew that was coming.
Yeah,
you know,
I was telling everybody when he got to that home run derby in New York, which is like infamous. Which is wild because everyone remembers that home run derby and he actually didn't win it. Justin Morneau won it. People forget about that.
People forget that all the time, but it was because of
But I was so stoked, and I go, finally, this dude's going to get on the main stage for people to see what I've been seeing since this guy was 19. And his batting practice is one of the most amazing things to see in like all of sports. Yeah. Like the furthest ball you've ever seen hit, like in your whole life, this guy's doing it 10 times in a row. And he's going to all fields, and he's using this caveman club of like 35, flared knob, huge barrel. Looks like they just pulled it off like an oak tree and just go swing this. And then he can run a sub-4 to first if he wants.
A rocket for an arm.
Yeah.
I mean, and his swing was so effortless too.
Yeah.
The ball just jumped.
And he had this huge hitch, you know, and it's so funny to see like what that swing would have been like today, because I'm sure the biomechanics would say no. Yeah. I'm sure everything would have said no on this whole deal. But he was a real special talent. All three of those guys. So Josh Hamilton, Carl Crawford, Rocco Baldelli.
So I mean that's a lot of talent in the outfield.
Yeah.
And you're an outfielder.
Yeah.
So I mean what was your relationship? I mean, is there some sort of like competition? I mean, you guys are in the minor leagues. You're all trying to work to the big leagues. You guys all know this.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at this talent. Is there any strain on relationships with that, or is it how do you navigate that?
So I thought it was really cool. So Josh was in right, Rocco was in center, Crawford was in left, and it just leaves one spot for me, and that's a DH. You know, so I was a real young DH, but that was a really cool scenario to where no one was trying to outshine each other. As much as like everyone had all 5 tools, we want to watch Crawford run. We want to watch Rocco play center and hit, and we want to watch Josh Hamilton throw the ball and hit moonshots. And Josh wanted to stay in right. Rocco wanted to stay in center. You know, Crawford wanted to stay in left, and I was totally content with just being on the field as a DH. But yeah, we and everyone was from different dynamics in life, different, you know, regions, you know, in the United States. And that was a real good group of guys. We all kind of made it to the big leagues at different times as well. But outside of, you know, Josh Hamilton, but that 2008 team, you know, that made it to the World Series with those guys finally get to succeed and just shock the world that year going to the World Series.
Yeah. What type of advice would you give for, because I mean, obviously at a much lower level, even high schoolers probably could feel that type of pressure with their own teammates, right? You know, whether it be looking, I want to play center field and so-and-so's playing center field and he's a grade above me, or I want to bat in this spot in the lineup, and, you know, but at the same time, you're on the same team, right? You need to have, we talked about before, off-camera chemistry. What are some practical ways to navigate that? I mean, you guys had it. It sounds like you guys did it. What are practical ways to do that, or what advice would you give for a kid in those scenarios?
There's so many different ways, right? Like if the book could be written, it would, and it hasn't, because there's so many different ways. But I think something like a characteristic is like jealousy, right? When you start to be jealous of a guy on your team, it's not going to work out, right? To be able to like enjoy the success of your teammate without any jealousy, I think puts you in a really good spot to succeed. When you start rooting against your teammates and when you start hoping for failure so you can get the playing time, it's like, maybe like if Rocco got hurt in center, maybe then I would be the center fielder. Like time and success is going to heal like everything. And as soon as you start getting jealous of, someone else's talent, like we weren't jealous of Crawford's speed. We weren't jealous of like Hamilton's power and Rocco's all around like ability. We were like super stoked to watch all these like skills and talents get showcased on the field. So looking back on it, not knowing at the times we were doing it, but like, man, you can't be jealous of the dude next to you by any means. And we also knew that like winning heals everything, right? And we knew if we stayed healthy and we were on the field together, we were going to beat anybody, and that's fun.
Yeah. So a selflessness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Probably
absolutely.
more so.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then you make it to the bigs, you make your big league debut in 2003.
2003. Yeah.
And who's your first phone call?
So we were the night before we're in Pawtucket. I'm with the Durham Bulls.
Okay.
And we win the AAA championship.
Oh, wow.
So it was great. I was only there so that was a cool story. So rewind to like AA. Before the game, there's a guy, Joey Gathright. Joey Gathright gets called in the office before the game. They're like, congratulations, everything's great. Our Durham team in AAA is like the best team ever. They clinched playoffs with like 8 days left, so we want to rest some of those guys, so they're going to call up some bodies. So Joey Gathright gets promoted to AAA. He's going to go. He comes out of the office, the big bro hug, everything's super excited. They call me into the office, and they're like, not getting promoted. We're going to send you when the season is over in a week and a half down back to St. Pete. We're going to overhaul your swing. We're going to cut down on your strikeouts, and you're going to go to instructs. I was like, not the meeting I thought was going to happen, but all right, here we go. Joey Gathright, our leadoff guy, gets on first inning, steals second, head first slide, separates his shoulder. Done for the year, right? And then everyone was so bummed. I was so bummed. This dude just got the call to go to AAA and all this stuff, and now whatever. So after the game, I get called into the office. I was just in here like, geez, what can I have? And they're like, verbatim, you don't deserve this, but we need a body because Joey got hurt, so you're going to go to AAA. And I was like, all right. I go, I'm going to pack up my locker, and you guys can give that thing away, because I'm never coming back. And they're like, oh, geez. You can give my locker away because I'm never coming back. And then so I go to AAA right there, sit the bench for like 2 days, and then they were going to rest their guys. So I got to play left field in Durham. I was batting seventh, go off, 3 for 4 homer, 2 doubles. Right. Next day, boom, I'm hitting sixth. Next day, I'm hitting fifth. And then the playoffs start. So now the everyday guys go back in. And the left fielder that year, he hit 300 with 30 and 100. It's 3 or 4 hole hitter. Goes out there and goes 4 strikeouts that game. I've been in AAA for like 5 days, right? And then the next day we go to the yard, shocks the whole team. He's sitting, I'm starting. And it was like, everyone was like, what? Like, he had 300 with 30, he had 1 bad game, and he's going on the bench. And in my head, I'm like, dude, I've been kicking and scratching just for the opportunity.
Every chance.
Just the opportunity. Boom, 4 for 4 right there again. And then in the playoffs, boom, was batting 7th and was batting 6th, and we win the first round. And I never came out of the lineup. I stay in the lineup, and we won the AAA championship against Pawtucket. And I was just on cloud 9. Season's over. I'm at the Pawtucket airport, sitting in front of my gate, and it says San Francisco because I'm flying home. And I get a tap on my shoulder from our trainer, and they're like, just got a call. You might be going to the big leagues. And I remember thinking, like, that's not how this is supposed to happen, right? I'm supposed to share it. Yeah, I'm supposed to see my teammates. We're supposed to have this big thing. Meanwhile, the night before the season is over, we're not playing baseball away, and I give all my baseball stuff away except for my glove. And we just played a whole minor league season. My cleats are banged up. My everything's banged up. I give the bat boys my bats, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to show up to the big leagues with a glove. That's all I got. Like, this isn't how it's supposed to work. And I go, and you said I might be going to the big leagues. So that's going to have to like speed up because I don't think I slept, right? Because we did the champagne, we did the cigars, we did the whole thing. So he comes back and he goes, yeah, you're going to the big leagues. And I was like, okay, where are they playing? They're like, New York. I was like, oh my gosh, I have no sleep. I smell like sticky champagne and cigar smoke, and I have a glove. Like, this isn't like a good look. Meanwhile, I'm in the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning, so it's 2 o'clock in the morning back home. I call my whole phone. No one picks up.
No
one picks up. I'm like, I'm going to Yankee Stadium, and no one even knows I'm getting called up. So I go there, and I remember I land. There's like the black like town car. I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing in the world. I got my luggage, and someone just grabbed my luggage and went that way. I thought someone stole my luggage. Meanwhile, we're in the show, and now cool stuff happens, right? So I go to the hotel, and I check into this like sweet Showtime hotel. And this is 2003. 2001, I was 2 weeks away from going to the Marines, and now I'm at freaking Yankee Stadium. So I kind of sneak into the clubhouse because I got just my glove, and I grab my chair and I tuck it like all the way into my locker. I'm just like, well, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want anything. And I look to my left, and like all the media kind of gets up on the wall, like over here. And I was like, oh, what's that? So they leave, and I go and I look at, and it was the lineup. The lineup just got posted. So I look at the bottom, where the extras are. I'm like, boom, boom. Oh, cool. Like I'm not like active yet, right? So I just kind of like scroll up, and there my name is batting fifth behind Rocco Baldelli, who's going for Rookie of the Year against Matsui in New York, sold out crowd. And I was like, they don't even know I don't have a bat. I don't have batting gloves. I don't have cleats. I think this kind of snuck up on them. Toby Hall was a good friend of mine. He was the big catcher there. And I kind of go over to Toby. I go, hey, dude, I don't have anything. He's like, oh, we got you covered. Boom. Use his bat, use his gloves, got some cleats.
Oh my gosh.
It was wild. So I was batting fifth. And then I think the second inning to lead the inning off, I led off the inning. And I remember being on the on-deck circle, kind of just like looking at the crowd and then looking up, like old Yankee Stadium, like a fishbowl. I remember people were like above me, like up there, like coming down. That was wild. And then, so David Wells was on the mound. And I remember thinking, right, so I had this like whole hat thing, and I got in the box and I just locked up. I was like, and I didn't want to like look up at him because I thought he would be like right here, just breathing snot down my neck, and he's just like on me. So I was kind of like hesitant. You're going to have to freaking look up. So I looked up, and it was probably one of the biggest, fastest like monkeys off my back. So I look up, and he was 60 feet, 6 inches away. And I was like, I've been doing this since high school. It's the same distance. And that was the thought that came into my head, like my first major league at bat, was this dude's the same distance away. Wow. And I was like, if this dude has a fastball, I'll do what I do to fastballs. So the first pitch comes in, big league curveball. I mean, out of the stadium. And I mean, I was up there like, and I was like, okay, that is not the same distance. That
I misjudged the distance.
Never seen something like that. And this dude's going 0-0 with one of those. And I was like, still, this dude has a fastball. That's my only chance. Next pitch, fastball, double down the line.
Wow.
I look up at the Jumbotron up there. It's like Jonny Gomes batting 1,000. I'm like, this level's easy. And I'm kind of digging myself at second base, looking around. I get a tap on my butt, and I was like, congrats, kid. And I was like, there he is. Number 2, Derek Jeter, in the flesh, with the perfect hat, the tailored pants, and the pinstripes, and the number 2. I mean, sharing the field with him, and I'm just like man-crushing, watching him over here. And I was like, oh, here comes his perfect pre-pitch. And he does his pre-pitch, and I hear pop. Totally missed a pitch by staring at this guy. And I was like, this game speeds up on you. real quick, and it doesn't care if it's your first game, your last game, or Derek Jeter. Like this game doesn't push pause for nothing.
Oh my god!
So I figured out real quick. So life sped up on me real fast for my first game in Yankee Stadium.
So how many games did you play up there that first year?
So that was like September 12th.
It was at the end of the year, obviously.
Yeah.
So like,
so then my next at bat, boom, got a single. I'm 2 for 2. My third at bat, I come out, I fly out to deep right center, almost a homer. So it would have been like double single homer right out of the gate. It was right up against the wall. And I was like, I am nailing life. Following day, I'm back in the lineup against Jared Weaver. And I proceeded to see like 17 straight sliders. And I was like, punch out. Right back to reality, right? Because I hit the double on a fastball, a single on a fastball, flew out.
Sky Report came out.
Yeah, that was the quickest Sky Report. And I just hated sliders, all this stuff. And it couldn't be more of a slider guy.
Well,
too,
yeah,
Weaver.
he was.
Yeah, that ball was like a Frisbee, like starting at me, going the other. So I saw the big league curveball and the big league slider, and then I was like, oh, I got my work cut out.
Yeah.
So yeah, right back to reality. That 1,000 batting average didn't last very long.
Then what? The next like 6 years, you kind of went up and down, a little up and down, right?
So that was 03, 04 was a little bit up and down, and then at the end of 04, I went down to Mexico and played winter ball because I knew I had to sharpen up like hitting off speed again, like my slider. Had an opportunity to go to the Dominican. I know Dominican, they throw hard, fast. I was like, I don't need help any there. I got that down. So when we go down to Mexico and the crafty, all that stuff. So I checked into Mexico, played a full season down there, just shy of the championship. But then I got picked up by the Mexico team. So we won the Caribbean World Series down there, which is wild. And that's kind of like we're winning, like sunk in. So we won the Caribbean while hosting the Caribbean down in Mazatlan. And that's when I knew like winning was what time it was. Watching the fans, watching the country, watching everyone rally around winning. I knew from there. So I had the AAA championship and the Caribbean championship.
Back to back. Essentially back to back.
Well, then after 2003, so it was the AAA championship in 03, and then I went to the Arizona Fall League, and we won the championship in the Fall League. So I got the AAA championship. I got the Fall League championship. And then I went to winter ball, and I got the Caribbean World Series championship. And that just leaves one thing left, and that was the World Series. I knew I had my work cut out. I knew it was going to be tough. And then we go to the World Series in 08, and we lost. Probably would have been the best thing that ever happened to me. But, yeah, so 03, September call-up, 04, up and down. 05, I got called up, sent back down, called back up, kind of like at the All-Star break. Finished the season, got third in Rookie of the Year, and then pretty much stayed in the big leagues from 05 on.
During those times when you're kind of going up and down a little bit, like what type of toll does that take on you mentally? Like because you get that first big league experience, that's kind of past you, and you probably there's probably an element of feeling like I've made it, I got to this point, right? Because that's what you're working towards your entire baseball career, right? But then it's like, okay, well I'm going to start in AAA or. Like, what type of pressure is that over those next, 5-6 years of the up and down?
So it's hard, and you want to do like everything you can to not get sent down. And obviously, there's different things, but you get sent down because you're not doing good, right? But when you get sent down, there's that long flight or whatever you got to do that is a reality check of the front office, the coaching staff thinks the ball club will be better without you. That's a tough pill to swallow, right? Yeah. Like you are handicapping us if you got to look at it like that way. Like we actually can't even have you on the team. We got to ship you out, right? If you think about it like that, not like, oh, we want to make room for so-and-so. They're like, we can't even have you on the team. Probably not the way you want to look at things, but if you want to be a realist, that's exactly what's happening. Right? Like, of course, we're going to send you down to go get better and, sharpen your tools and all that stuff, but we're actually a better team without you. And you're like, huh. And then you also figure out it's a lot harder to stay in the big leagues than it is to get to the big leagues. You figure that out real quick. I mean, day 2 and I see 16 straight sliders, right, after a couple fastballs. But I knew that's where I needed to be, right? Yeah. And I checked off all the winning goals, and I just had like one more to check off. And then we go to '08 in the World Series and lose, and then history from there.
Yeah. How would you say, like, for athletes to deal with pressure? Obviously, there's different types of pressure. Not every athlete is obviously experiencing that type of pressure of, like, hey, I want to be a regular, everyday guy in the big leagues.
Yeah.
But, like, what is the best way for them to handle just pressure situations? You know, maybe it's in a game, or maybe it's trying to make a team, trying to make a college team, being a starter, whatever it may be, whatever's in front of them, I guess.
So there's kind of two aspects of it. One, like playing with it, right? And that's why the postseason is so great, I think. And I tell people, when you watch the postseason, you'll see something that you haven't seen all year. And that's because people are playing with pressure, right? So player to player wise, like pressure, like, yeah, you should have adrenaline. You should care more because there's more on the line. And you do dumb stuff when you let the pressure get to your head. So I say, like, soak in all this pressure, soak in this adrenaline, squeeze harder, swing harder, run faster, but you just can't let that adrenaline go above your neck, right? It can't clog up your brain. It can't do this stuff. And you see in the postseason, these dudes just throw the ball to the different base. Or they just do something like a curveball spiked like 32 feet, and he hasn't done it like all year. Base running blender. So when that pressure like gets up into your head, you'll do some dumb stuff. But then on the other side of things, like, that's so cool to have pressure. That's probably like the best privilege you can have in sports, is to have pressure. So pressure is an honor, right? Pressure is an absolute honor to have. So if you bottle that up and enjoy these like huge moments, especially in baseball, you're going to have 100 times more meaningless at bats than you are big at bats, in meaningless innings on defense and on the mound than big innings. So when those things come, you really got to take a step back and be like, this is just an honor to have all this pressure.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to almost we were talking about the perspective of when you were a child. You had a great perspective on what was going on, and what you just described was another perspective. Right?
Yeah.
Is viewing things that a lot of people may view as pressure, or feeling it, and then but the way your perspective is different changes your whole outlook on the scenario. And then, I mean, again, you've had a long hit. You just went through the championships that you were a part of.
Yeah.
Not only good teams, but getting called up saying, I'm never going back down.
Yeah.
Like, that's putting pressure on yourself. You were putting the pressure on yourself in that scenario. Yeah. And what did you do? You thrived.
Yeah.
Went up to the big leagues, thrived. Right. So, like, though, it's almost like in those moments, I mean, obviously you had a ton of success leading up to the moment in 2013, right? Which is honestly the game-changing moment of the series. Yeah. Because you're down 2-1.
Yeah.
That home run changes the whole, that you hit off of, and then who?
Seth Mattis, I think, off him. But yeah, that was a wild game in itself too. So that was game 4, and I wasn't in the lineup.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wasn't in the lineup, and it was like 6:30. So if you're like 1, 2, and 3 in the lineup, you hit in the first group. So the next guy's hitting the second group, obviously, because you got to get ready for the game.
Right.
And, the subs don't have to get, so you hit in the last group. So I'm hitting in the last group. And my BP was different from playing and from being, on the bench. From I'm playing, I'm going to take my BP with the scouting report of what the pitcher has. If I'm subbing, I'm just kind of like getting loose, hitting homers, digging myself, total different, aspect of getting ready for a game. And then John Farrell, our manager, comes like running out of the dugout. Never, what's he on the field for? All this stuff. Come here. He's like, hey, Shane Victorino has back spasms. He can't go. Like, you're in the lineup. And I was like, all right. And he just had this like total blank, like worried. I'm like, why are you worried? Are you all right putting me in the lineup? Like, I'm cool. He's like, well, are you going to be ready? I'm like, well, I got to finish my last round here. I'll get me a PBJ and I'll get my uni on. I'll be on the field for the anthem and we'll run it out there. I've done 1,000 of these. Yeah. I was like, game 4 of the World Series. I was like, we got it covered. So first at bat, ground ball to third, second at bat, double play. And I'm like, oh, geez, this is not what I signed up for. So third at bat, so Big Poppy in front of me gets like an intentional, unintentional walk with Lance Lynn on the mound.
Because before that, Pedroia hit? Would he hit a single or double? Or
Pedroia hit a single, and then David Ortiz basically got intentionally walked, and they make the pitching change. And things happen in the World Series, and I'm in the lineup, and David Pedroia, Big Poppy's playing first. Mike Napoli's on the bench. So this 100% should have been Mike's at bat, right? And I figured if I go back to the dugout to look at the scouting report, it's kind of going to speed things up. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, why is Johnny hitting? Jeez, Mike, take a spot. So for the first time ever, I never went back to the dugout to get the scouting report.
You wanted that at bat.
I wanted that at bat. I just wanted the at bat. I had no idea what was going to happen.
The opportunity,
baseball is
like
hard.
You were talking about.
Yeah,
You wanted
I just wanted the
opportunity.
opportunity. Right, and I could sit here and say I wanted that opportunity. I hit it into a double play, but I got that opportunity, and that's always what I wanted. So I totally went further away from the batter's box, kind of hiding. Yeah. And I kind of gave a peek, and I was like, does Mike have his helmet on? Is he even ready to go? And I knew he had 2 pitches left, and I started walking to home plate because I just had to get my foot in the box. Once my foot gets in the box, it's my at-bat. So I knew from Jump Street I was going to take the first pitch just because I just needed the at-bat to be mine.
Yeah.
Never faced Seth Mattis before, and I saw his first pitch, kind of 3/4 slider, cutter guy, and you go in your Rolodex and you pull out, because I never faced him. I was like, boom, like Luke Greger. So he was exactly like Luke Greger. So I go on my Luke Greger scouting report, has some success off him, but he is absolutely filthy as well. So just match that scouting report off him. Got to a 2-2 count. We got into a little battle a little bit, and his, he just left one over the plate and put a good swing on it, and then
pimped the mess out of it.
Had to, because I just
yes,
wanted
of course.
to. Yeah, and I tell people all the time, dude, I've been waiting since I was 6 years old for this. What's the hurry?
Yes.
You want me to hurry this up? I'll get on a podcast one day and tell you how much this at bat means. But little bat flip and went all the way around the bases, and I knew with the team that we had, once we had the lead, it was a wrap.
It was a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that game goes the other way. The whole series goes another way, probably.
Yeah, we were down 2-1.
Down 2-1.
Yep.
I mean, and there was 2 outs. I think there was 2 outs, right?
Yeah,
again, it's one swing away from it not going that way.
Yep.
That's interesting. You say going into your Rolodex. Is that something that players? I mean, I don't know if coaches talk about that with players enough. And just having an approach, and then getting an approach from past pitchers. Yeah. How important is that, and when did you learn that?
Yeah, I was big on that. I was big on, bottling up the good and bottling up the negative, right? We always want to bottle up the good and you want to bottle up the negative. But, I mean, you should, the best of the best. I mean, you hear, Wade Boggs, George Brett, when you hear them, going on these rants, man, they could bring up, September 2nd in 76 and walk you through this at bat. And you're just like, what? I can't even remember yesterday. So you knew the best of the best were doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's a focus and it's a preparation to every at bat and every inning. And if you have those 2 things, you're going to remember, right? I mean, it's like that test in 8th grade that you just grinded and studied on it. And if someone asks you that question today, you're probably going to remember that. But the test that you didn't study and you didn't know the answer, you still don't know the answers. So the preparation and focus on every single game, every single at bat is going to let you have it in your head. But I always had that Rolodex and just pulling comps out, right? And then some of the best pitchers in the game, you got a Kershaw, and a Bumgarner who don't have comps. There's nothing you could do. A Mariano Rivera, that's the only cutter like that, right? So I think the big leagues do have those guys that have those outlier things is because you can't pull that comp out.
One of the reasons why they're so good, probably, right?
Exactly.
Because there's no one like them.
There's no one like it, yeah.
Now, and I think I'm right on this, but from an outsider's view, from a fan's perspective, I always viewed you as like a glue guy. For teams. You know what I mean? That guys that we talked about it with the with the bombing, the guys rally around and someone's got to kind of step up, and you were one of the big guys for that. And again, from an outsider's perspective, how does someone become a glue guy?
Yeah. I think it's hard. I mean, even when I was in player development, I was tasked with trying to convert dudes to glue guys. And right. I don't know if it's genetic, but just some guys have it and some guys don't. I think you can become a glue guy. I think you can get taught a lot of important things to be a glue guy. But man, you just really got to care about your team, and you got to care about winning. And then most importantly, you got to be like self-aware of what you're doing, and you have to do all those things right. Like you can't jump a kid for not running to first when you don't run to first. You can't get a kid to the gym when you're not in the gym. You can't get a kid to watch a video when you're not watching video. So you really got to be self-aware and self-accountable of what you're doing. There's nothing worse than a dude jumping you for not running the first when they don't run to first,
Right.
whether they're an all-star, an MVP, or not.
Right.
And then just knowing how important winning is, and winning is what it's all about, and knowing that you need 25 dudes to win, and you can't do it like on your own. And when you start getting into the business side of things with arbitration and free agency, like I'd always say, like every home run in the postseason is worth like 8 in the regular season, right? So if you have like 2 homers in the postseason, that's like a 16 homer season. It really is.
Yeah.
And you need everyone around you to rally to get there. And that's the environment. That's the pressure. That's everything. And then too, with like my childhood and not having a huge family and just going, and when you're on the field, you know, people don't have their contracts in their back pocket. You don't know how much someone's making. You don't know what car they're driving. You don't know what house they're in. Everyone's in this same like fraternity at the same time. And there's just a couple outliers of things that can happen to be a glue guy and to stick out.
Yeah. Would you say they're like, because I've talked with different coaches, and sometimes coaches, you know, they'll pick the kid like this is the leader, right? But doesn't there have to be an element of that player also being good?
Yeah.
Right, because generally, you know, at the younger levels, everyone at the big league level is good. So, you know, but at the younger levels,
right.
You know, no one really wants to follow the kid that is the worst player on the team,
right.
even if he's doing everything right, even if he's being selfless, if he's, you know, encouraging the teammates and everything like that. But it's like, well, you know, Johnny's, and this guy over here is just not very good.
Totally.
You know, so like there is that element of like, well, I also have to look to this guy because he's a good player too.
Right.
So I'm trusting what he's saying, and I could follow this guy.
Yeah, it's hard, especially with the game of baseball, right? So the game of baseball is a results-driven industry built on failure, right? So for a glue guy, a chemistry guy, the guy that thinks like you have to have it, the guy that's passionate about it, like if you're to build a team, like I'd want 25 asshole all-stars, like because this is a results-driven industry, right? But you can't, so you do have to sprinkle in a little bit. And I think that glue guy and the chemistry, the most important thing is can that guy hold the best player on the team accountable? Mm-hmm. And I think that is the biggest separation. And on the other side, it's so hard, the game of baseball, to be the best player on the team and the glue guy. So there's actually a lot of work that, you know, takes being the glue guy. Like you got to be accountable. You got to check on everyone. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do the small stuff. The guy strikes out. You know, you got to, you know, sit next to him. Boom, boom. You got to hold him accountable. That's so hard to do that and to be the best player on the team. So majority of the time, the glue guy, the chemistry guy, is not the best player on the team.
Yeah.
But can that guy hold the best player on the team accountable? Right. And that's the biggest separation.
And does the glue guy also like have to have a relationship with a coach?
Yeah.
Right? Because like coach is hopefully driving the direction of the team, and that guy that's also in the clubhouse, that's not the coach, that's also pushing guys in the direction where the team needs to go.
You are like the coach's caddy.
Yeah.
Like you really are.
Yeah.
And then that is actually really hard because you can't be like the teacher's pet.
Right.
Right?
Right. You can
like,
be viewed that
way. They see you in the manager's office, right? They see you in there. And the second you rat a dude out, bro, you are gone.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, you take more arrows and bullets for guys on your team than they would ever know. Like, there's, you know, the manager call you in the office and be like, what the hell's going on with this guy? Like, you call him in, right? But I mean, to have that respect and to have that trust, to know that information is going to get relayed back, and knowing that information is going to come from me and not the manager. You know, there'd be times where we're like, bro, you're going to get called into the office, or you got to get this cleaned up, or you got to do all that. And they're like, oh, what'd they say? They didn't say anything. I'm just telling you on my own before it gets to you. Meanwhile, they did say something, you know, to get to me to do that. So, I mean, there's got to be some safety nets and some safety blankies to get to some of these guys, because they could be the best alpha dudes, but, you know, there's some insecurities that these guys have that you got to figure out real quick. And again, like finding out what language these kids speak and what makes them tick is really cool. And like finding out the rosin bag and the coaching thing, like these chess matches, and when you can find what a dude, you know, and what makes him tick is really cool.
Well, you know, the other thing that when I was doing research, and I didn't realize this, and the more you talk, there's more instances of these things happening than I even knew about. But you had these moments where you would get unbelievably hot at the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, you had 2-3 home run games.
Yeah.
Right? I think the first person in Rays history ever to do that.
Yeah.
And then you had like an 11 home run month.
Yeah.
In the big leagues, which is absolutely insane as well. Like, now this is $1 million question. So, if is there, looking back, is there anything that during those times when you get hot or when you get called to the big leagues, all these different moments that you were doing differently than other times of the year, or you were just in the zone and that's just the way sports work?
So this game is so fun when you're hot. This is the coolest freaking game you ever could have. I mean, I don't know what it's like to hit like 8 threes in a row in the NBA, but when you're hot, it's an easier game, right? Like my second game in the big league, right, with all those sliders, right? If I didn't swing at those, I would have baited them back into the fastball, right? So that's like big league stuff. And when you are hot, the opposing coach knows, the catcher knows, and the pitcher knows, which then will have more pressure on them, which means more mistakes. When you're hot, you're literally hitting balls right down the middle, right? You watch some of these guys, watch like home runs, like at the end of the night for like the 3-hole hitter or the Fernando Tatis and all that stuff. Like very rarely will you be like, that ball was on the outer third, nasty, and they hit it out. The ball is right down the middle.
Right.
80% of home runs are balls right down the middle. Yeah. And that's what happens when you're hot, right? Because you're able to lay off the edges and you have to bait them back. And when you're hot, you're hitting in 3-1 counts. You're hitting in 2-0 counts. You're hitting in a homer right down the middle, 0-0. And when you're not hot, it's 0-2. It's 1-2. You never make it to 3 balls. You're always 0-1.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, and as long as the season is, as long as the game is, those little runs, man, are so cool and so fun. But being hot in this game is really hard to get there. Yeah. But when you are, it's an easy game. It really is. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we're doing all this crazy stuff. You're hitting like 91 mile an hour fastballs right down the middle.
Isn't that amazing that like it's again, I've never played at the even remotely close to the level you played, but I think every baseball player has experienced those moments of where the ball legitimately feels like a beach ball coming in.
Yeah.
Nothing can fool you, whether it be a slider, laying off the pitcher's pitches.
Yep.
And then on the opposite side, we've also all experienced when, I mean, it looks like a pebble coming in and has no clue what's going on.
Yep.
And it's amazing. It's the same ball. It's the same 60 feet, 6 inches. And that's a real thing.
Yeah. And as fun as those like hot streaks are, I mean, I could bring up 2 at bats, one in Cleveland and one in Seattle, like walking to the plate, being like, I hope my family's not watching, because I might embarrass them. Like I don't know what's about to happen, but getting a hit is a non-option right now. And then I could, I got an at bat like in Toronto, Colorado. Place like that where I walked in, I'm just like, how far is this ball going to go?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, why don't you just bottle that up and do that the whole time?
Right.
Yeah. And, and if you don't hit a homer, it's going to be a walk.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're hot in baseball, you're walking. Yeah. That is the biggest separation.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's such a hard game. It like really is.
Before I have a video I want you to look at, but before you brought up something earlier. Are you like a first pitch, because you're talking about different counts, right? And when we get behind in counts, obviously our batting average drops, and there's a lot of evidence of that. But coaches have different philosophies on whether we should be swinging at the first pitch or not. What is your opinion on swinging at the first pitch in an at bat?
So the first pitch of an at bat,
and let me qualify it. Let's just say at a younger level. Okay, because obviously we're not talking big leaguers right now. So, but let's just say at the high school level, or even at the college or high school level.
So, everyone talks about like guess hitting, right? So it's a guess hitting, right? A guess would be like guessing the pitch or guessing the location. Can you do it? I think everybody can do it, right? You do it every single day in batting practice. You're guessing he's going to throw a fastball, and you're right. So what I did OO, pretty much like any at bat, is I would guess the pitch and I'd guess the location, which is really easy to do. Now, the hard part is not swinging if it's not that pitch or that location, right? So there's a gray area and a grooming area of I'm going to guess curveball. He throws a curveball, but it bounces on the plate,
not,
right? It's not your location. So guessing the pitch and guessing the location. And I think anyone can do that, right? Like, oh, I'm not a guess hitter. Well, can you be a guess hitter for one count? Right? The 0-0 count, that's it, right? And if you guess wrong, right? If I'm guessing like curveball for a strike and he throws a fastball for a strike, it's okay, right? Your plan just wasn't right there. So if you can, I say the game becomes a little bit easier if you can like have it to where your approach and your plan wasn't right versus your swing. Because if it's, you don't always get out because your swing was wrong, right? So if you, it makes the offers and it makes, you know, the outs easier if you can be like, oh, just my plan wasn't right.
Yeah.
So I would guess pitch and location 0-0.
That's good. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Let's pull up this video. This is going back to kind of being in the zone. This is something that Kobe Bryant was talking about.
It's a strange feeling because you know you're in the zone, but you can't afford to allow yourself to know you're in the zone, because once you do, then you lose it. You know, because being in that moment, it's all about being in that moment and not letting anything else enter into your mind emotionally or psychologically. And you just continue to go and go and go. And, you know, for me as a player, you know, when I get hot, I mean, I get blistering hot. And you know, that's something that I just had to kind of keep going and not take my mind and focus, let my focus shift to something else.
What do you think of that? As far as like what, like during those hot streaks, as being in the zone. And now I listened to him, obviously he was a basketball player. Plays are happening more quickly, one after another. You know, baseball, we're talking game to game, at bat to at bat. There's time, there's 20 minutes, half an hour literally between these things. Do you agree with what he just talked about, trying to stay in it, not to think about the moment while you're in it?
Yeah, so I think in the baseball side of things, so let's say like early hitting or extra hitting, early ground balls, you know, all this stuff. The guys that opt to do that aren't hot right now, right? They need the extra work. I think you have to work harder to stay in the zone, right? A lot of guys kind of like back off because they're hot. When you feel yourself starting to get hot, like you have to work harder and work more, right? And I always tell people that, like, how'd you know you were in the zone? Because I got out, right? Because I got out of the zone. I went from not getting out to not being able to like hit, and it happens like that. And it's right when you pull your guard down, right? It's that extra hitting, it's that extra rep, it's that, you know, you have a workout day and you're like, oh, I'm not working out today because I'm like freaking 7 for my last 10. I'm freaking nailing it. Maybe show up a little bit late. You know, you're doing a lot of media because you're kind of like hot right now, and you skip out on some of these reps, and then the baseball gods just go zzz, zap you like right away. So it's really hard, and it's a big character check to work harder when you're hot.
That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were playing, you know, analytics were really coming in. And like, did you use a lot of the analytics while you were a player to stay maybe in those zones, or to realize what you were doing when you were doing doing well? Did you use that much?
Yeah. I mean, I was a real big like video guy on the pitching, and a real big, I guess it was like analytics back then, of like what he threw and when and the percentages.
Okay, so more so getting your scouting report on the pitchers. You watched a lot of video. Did you watch a lot of video of your own swing as well?
Not much.
Really?
Not much. I mean, I did. I would want more than like my swing. I wanted to know what they were throwing me and why. Like, I want to know. I kind of compared it to like playing cards, right? Like poker or even like blackjack. Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you knew what they had, or if you knew what they were going to do?
Yeah.
Like, I figured my swing and the muscle memory, things are just going to happen. I'm not going to have like this crazy B or C swing. Everyone's like, oh, the A swing. How often does an A swing happen at 500 at bats, right? Or just chase the A swing. Great idea. I'm sure the pitcher is going to chase his A fastball too, or that pitcher is going to look, or the catcher is going to look right here and be like, he sucks at that. That's all we're throwing. But get your A swing off. Come on. But I wanted to know like sequences. I want to know percentages. I want to know what he threw in a 3-ball count. I wanted to know what he threw in an 0-0 count. I wanted to know what he threw with runners in scoring position. I wanted to know who was in front of me, who was behind me, who was hot, who was cold situations. So that was a real big like preparation going into a game. And then of course that whole preparation is going to flip into the bullpen, into the closer, what the score of the game is. There's a lot of stuff, and that's probably what I missed today is the preparation for a game.
Yeah.
And again, that God-given ability, dude, doesn't have to do that, but I was the grinder guy. I wanted to flip over every single rock to have success in the big leagues and know what was coming before it came.
Yeah. When you're coaching like with the organizations, whether it be the D-backs or some of these other organizations, is that kind of one of the messages you're giving to these guys, is kind of letting them know? Because I think, and maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but the swing mechanics video, like you saying, I didn't really watch much of my own, swing.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys, that's what they focus on a
Totally.
lot. Is that true?
Yeah, I think
More
so.
so than looking at the approach and kind of having an approach and knowing, going to that Rolodex like you were talking about, and even having a Rolodex to go into.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally, yeah. You got to bottle everything up. I mean, this day and age, there's like duffel bags of like different equipment for like hitting, right? But if you're to like, I say like, if you get out, and if you're just to check 2 things off, one, did you swing at a ball or take a strike? Maybe that's why you got out. It has nothing to do with mechanics. Absolutely nothing to do. Or 2, were you late? I think that's 90% of the time, like why you get out, right? It's late, or you took a strike or swung at a ball. Both those things have nothing to do with mechanics.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you can be on time and swing at strikes, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah.
I think you'll be all right. Like watch a Major League Baseball game. There's 9 hitters on each side, and there's 18 different batting stances, right? You can like blur it, and if you watch the game, you can be like, okay, so-and-so's up, so-and-so's up. Like there's not a right way to start and finish. There's some things you got to do in the zone that'll give you more success than the others. But like if you swing at strikes, take balls, and you're on time, you'll be in great shape.
That's funny. That's very similar. So when I used to give a lot of hitting lessons to younger kids, they would come in, I'd ask them like, what's going on with your games? And they'd be like, I'm striking out a lot. And I used to give them this test. I'd say there are a few reasons why people strike out. I said the first thing is your eyes, right? So if you obviously if you close your eyes, you could have the best swing in the world, you could be on time, everything, but you're not gonna hit the ball very well. So that's one. So you got to check your eyes, say yes or no, right? Second thing was poor timing. So are you early? Are you late?
Yeah.
Right. We strike out a lot if we're early. We strike out a lot if we're late.
Yeah.
Poor pitch selection was the next one.
Yep.
But and that could be me swinging at bad pitches or me not swinging at good pitches that are down the middle, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one was swing plane. If I'm swinging straight down on the ball or if I'm swinging
Yeah.
straight up on the ball, I'm gonna get a lot of strikeouts as well.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a very simplified version for young kids, but that's a similar principle.
That's it. Yeah, and there's a lot of mechanics and a lot of tools, and we're getting into the SCAP and getting into all this stuff. But if you put yourself in a good position to hit, what's that? Well, it's different. Get a good, strong position, and you swing at strikes hard, right? Not like this will sometimes like, I just want to kind of get the ball over the second baseman's head, kind of flare it in there. Well, what if that doesn't quite work out? It's a fly ball to second, right? We still got to do damage, right? You still got to get up there. You have a weapon in your hand, like a samurai sword. Yeah. The samurais aren't going like, yeah. Like you're trying to cut the rope. You got to squeeze hard, swing hard. That's what I tell the kids.
Yeah.
But with that being said, man, like get on time, right? Yeah. Try and get the ball in front of your front knee, and then now you have like more room for air. Right, so if you start here down the left field line for a righty, and then you got center, then you got right field. If your contact's like right here to center, and then you got right field, you have no left field action. So getting the ball out front, having more room for air, and just swing at strikes.
Yeah, I love that. These days, you got a couple new things going on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have an agency.
Yeah.
Right. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So Indy Pro, the sports agency, and so sports agent, right? So it was Jeremy Maguire, right? The old movie, you're a sports agent. So we talk about like how I got there, and like for one is being like a glue guy, right? Being the chemistry guy and just absorbing the success of my teammates, wanting them to succeed, wanting the best for them, and doing everything I could to hold them accountable for them to succeed. Now, being on a team that wins, all this stuff. And I've checked every single box off, and finding out post-playing what gets me like the most joy. It was funny, post-2013 season, I talk about it now, but it like kind of took the fight out of me from playing, because all I wanted to do was win a World Series, and I hit my goal, and it was kind of like, right after 26.2 miles in the marathon, you're done running. Right. You're done. And I admire the people that want to do it a whole bunch, but like I hit that finish line and I was like done. But I still had a lot of want for people to get better around me and protect my guys and help them win. So I got into player development, which was really cool. Got me down to the minor leagues, watch these kids develop, what they need, what they don't need. Work, and still do a little bit with Yacker Tech in the data world, and brought me down to the college level and the amateur level. And now, from playing a long time and being in the game for 20 years, like, what can I do? And I just have so much passion for helping. And I have so much passion for taking darts and taking shots to protect my players. And, not really having it on the bingo card as a player is to be a sports agent. Like, that's what I'm cut out to be now. Yeah. With like Chris Lamonis and Joe Piloto over there, we're running it. And we want to do this thing from the ground zero and do it different. How can you do it different? Well, I think most importantly, like ground roots and trust, and making it like a family deal as well. Like your mom is in, your dad is in, your sister is in. And I've always had the most passion for myself is watching other people succeed, especially in the player development. So now knowing it's kind of like all under Indy Pro, under this one deal. And I can be the guy's like baseball caddy. Every single step that he's going to take, when he's hot and when he's cold and when he's transferring, when he's getting sent down, when he's getting called up, like I've done. Yeah. Right. So when that fork is in the road, I can get him in the right direction, or I can let him know what's going to happen if he takes the other direction. It's your step and it's your career. You do whatever you want, but I did it already, and this is what happened. Or I wish I would have went this way.
With like the NIL stuff like that, with these college athletes, and even, I guess some of the high school athletes getting into college, is that those players that you can represent as well, kind of leading up to that? Is that...
We're in the Wild Wild West, buddy.
Yeah.
We are in the Wild Wild West. Absolutely. But, so we kind of get caught up in the NIL. The NIL is like real big in the top 25. There's a lot of schools. Like junior college is some of the best baseball on the planet. It really is. I was a JUCO guy. There's no NIL there.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think in baseball, unlike some other sports, is these guys truly have their eye of getting drafted. That's way more important than chasing down these millions and millions of dollars. And, baseball, you're not selling out, $105,000 arenas or, people arenas, like Ohio and all these places. So there's not too much there. There are some there, but do you want to get paid to be an amateur athlete, or do you want to get paid to be a pro athlete? Yeah. Right. So making your money in the draft and in the big leagues is a lot more, but it's on the table and no one's going to turn it down. Yeah. And as an agent, you do got to give these guys the opportunity, and you do want to grease their pockets a little bit if the opportunity comes. But at the same time, it's a results driven industry. Yeah. Right. If you want some of that, you got to bang.
How do you get, find your clientele? Is it just through, obviously people know your name and, like how are you finding people?
Yeah, so it's word of mouth. It's back on the grind. It's back hitting the road. And, you just got to sit down with these people. Zoom is obviously way different. Yeah. These old people, right? Like hundreds of thousands of miles on the car tracking these people down. But you got to go after talent. And then there's like, there's the top guys. I think it's on social media, you'll see these guys when they interview the big league players, and they're like, what, college scholarships did you have? And a lot of these guys in the big leagues are D2, D3. So, the pool is smaller, and everyone goes after like these big guys. I want to find that diamond in the rough.
Yeah. I want to find the right guy.
Yeah. I want to identify that right guy. I want to help groom that guy. I want to help that player development. But But yeah, going out there, evaluating talent, going to like a junior college or whatever, and there's a guy with just like a power fastball that everyone's going to chase. But I want to see if this guy's running on and off the field, right? I want to see bat speed. I want to see if this guy spikes his helmet or if he doesn't spike his helmet. So yeah, going after guys, and then now instead of like player development, by just taking the next step, you have these guys for their whole career, and there's a lot on the line.
Is that how that works? So like if they sign an agency, I mean, you have them. I mean, I'm unfamiliar with the whole process. So how does that?
So these guys, and it's a tough industry to get into, right? Because you can hire and fire your agent whenever you want, right? Like that. And there's a lot of crazy sharks in the industry too, which you find out like real quick, and they're stealing clients and moving and lies and all this stuff. But as it is in a relationship, right? I mean, you got a really attractive, wife or girlfriend. They go to the grocery store. Someone's going to be trying doing all that. They're like, no, I'm good. Yeah. Right? So that's what you got to do with your clients. And that's what I think I'm best at, is protecting my guys and helping them win and helping them get better. And that's what indie sports can do.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's also kind of probably why you're trying to identify the right people, because you want to make sure the right people are in your family.
Yeah,
right.
It is an extended family. It's absolutely an extended family. It's talking to a kid on a bus who's over 20. It's talking to a kid on the bus who's 20 for 20. Right. It's getting him the right equipment. It's getting him the right medical treatment that he needs or whatever. And again, at the end of the day, it's still a results-driven industry, but I have passion for these kids getting better, helping them, helping their families.
That's awesome. Do you have any other projects that you're kind of working on outside of the agency thing?
Not yet. I mean, the hamster's always ticking over there. But indie sports takes a lot of my time, whether it's going after guys or meeting guys that we have, putting them in the right situations, putting them, in situations, whether it's where to work out, what to get better with, questions on and off the field. It takes a lot of my time, and it's not work if you love it, but there's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work involved, sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of hours.
That's awesome. We'll attach your Indie Pro to this podcast, and so we'll throw it at the bottom. But man, thank you so much for
this is fun, man.
Hanging out with us today.
You run a tight ship here. It's pretty cool.
Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to like and subscribe, and check out Jonny's Indie Pro thing below. And until next time, God bless. Thank you so much for watching this full podcast. If you'd like to watch more content with this guest, feel free to click right here. And if you want to watch another one of our podcasts, click right here.